Hey book readers, I've been enjoying Mitch Albom books for over 20 years. So it's high time I take a look at the 10 of his I've cracked open and rank the reads. Let's see which ones Al-bummed me out and which ones really scratch my Mitch itch, as I rank them from worst to first. Coming in at number 10 is The First Phone Call from Heaven. In this book, the residents of the tiny town of Coldwater, Michigan start getting phone calls from dead people. But these aren't strangers. They claim to be loved ones that the Coldwater folks knew in life. Wives, sons, and other loved ones. And they're sharing such personal details that it must be real, right? Is it a hoax, or is there really some miracle happening? Is there a heaven, or is there just nothing? As the town turns into a media circus, the residents are torn between faith and skepticism, as a handful of characters try to figure out the truth of these mysterious phone calls. Also, just for fun, Albom tosses in some details about Alexander Graham Bell and the invention of the telephone throughout the novel. So why is it my least favorite work by Albom? Well, this book about grief and the afterlife sadly falls flat due to stereotypical characters, a predictable plot, a weaker message than usual, and the fact that it just didn't connect with me emotionally like a lot of Mitch Albom's other books do. Coming in at number 9 is For One More Day. Honestly, this book shares a lot of similarities with The First Phone Call from Heaven. It's about a mother-son relationship and asks the question, what if you had a chance to spend just a little bit more time with a deceased loved one? In the book, Charlie Chick Bonetto is an ex-baseball player whose life has been on a long downward spiral. He's an unemployed, divorced alcoholic whose own daughter wants nothing to do with him anymore. Well, that's the final straw. He decides to commit suicide. But soon thereafter, his mother shows up. The odd part, though, is that she's been dead for 8 years. Now, Chick didn't have the best relationship with his mom, so this reunion is difficult to say the least. But it forces Chick to confront some of his demons, rethink moments from his past, and wrap his head around a mother's unconditional love for her son. It's a story of accepting people's flaws and healing old wounds, and it encourages you to reach out to close friends and family while you still have the chance. The reasons it's so far down the list are that it drags a bit in the middle, it has a meh kind of ending, and it didn't quite reach the emotional heights it potentially could have. Number 8 is Have a Little Faith. So an 82-year-old white rabbi and a black Detroit pastor walk into a bar. No, seriously. This memoir from Albom's life features two contrasting spiritual leaders, their lives, their beliefs, and how it all intersects with Albom. But it starts with the old rabbi from Albom's childhood asking him to deliver the eulogy at his funeral. Have a Little Faith touches on the human experience, our purpose, faith in tough times, and doubts that creep up. My main issue with it is how it can be overly sentimental. Mitch Albom is a master at pulling on people's heartstrings, but he's pulling too hard here. I wish he would have let his interactions with and memories of these two religious leaders speak for themselves instead of drizzling syrup on top. Whether you're Jewish, Christian, or none of the above, this book will help you better appreciate the people from all faith backgrounds and the complex questions we all struggle to answer. One final note about the sales of this book, 10% of the profits go to charity, some of that helping refurbish places of worship that aid the homeless. At number 7 on my list, I have The 5 People You Meet in Heaven. We're back to Mitch Albom's bread and butter, inspirational fiction. Yet again, he's targeting themes like the afterlife, redemption, and the importance of human connection. The novel follows Eddie, an 80-something-year-old maintenance worker at an amusement park, who dies while trying to save a young girl from a malfunctioning ride. When he wakes up in the afterlife, Eddie encounters 5 people from his existence on Earth, each with a direct or indirect connection to him. And they're here to help Eddie realize the importance of his life. As this book tries to show, there's a ripple effect that happens with each of our actions, so even the smallest things can cause big changes or have widespread impact. And the way Albom goes about showing this is sweet, but simple, and slightly boring. Not that I should expect deep theological takes or high-stakes action from Albom, but it was kind of just blah. Nothing surprised me about the takeaways from this book or where it winded up going. Moving right along, at number 6 is The Timekeeper. This is a bit of a departure for Albom. It's a fantasy novel that focuses on time, mortality, and the value of life. I like the quick book jacket synopsis on this one, so here it is. The inventor of the world's first clock is punished for trying to measure God's greatest gift. He is banished to a cave for centuries and forced to listen to the voices of all who come after him seeking more days and more years. Eventually, with his soul nearly broken, Father Time is granted his freedom, along with a magical hourglass and a mission, a chance to redeem himself by teaching two earthly people the true meaning of time. He returns to our world, now dominated by the hour counting he so innocently began, and commences a journey with two unlikely partners. One, a teenage girl who's about to give up on life, the other, a wealthy old businessman who wants to live forever. To save himself, he must save them both, and stop the world to do so. I think this was the first time Albom tried to have the narrator or main character as something other than just a normal person, and I'll talk a little bit later about another couple books he does this with in a second. But in this one, it's Father Time who takes us through the story. The book does a good job of reminding readers to enjoy the present and savor each moment as the days, months, and years tick by. This seems like an especially relevant message nowadays, as it's so easy to waste time on meaningless activities and not share your potential to spread joy, meaning, and creativity into the world. At number 5, I have Tuesdays with Morrie. This is the book Albom is most known for, and honestly, it's probably further down this list than it deserves to be, but there's some recency bias here since I haven't read this in like 20 years. What's instantly different about this novel is that it's nonfiction. In it, Albom has been out of touch with his former college professor, Morrie Schwartz, for a couple of decades, but they reconnect just as Morrie's facing the last few months of his battle with ALS. The book makes it feel like you're in the room with Morrie and Mitch as they chat every Tuesday, covering all manner of subjects. Morrie shares a lot of hard-earned wisdom, offering insights into loving people and living well. Without a doubt, it's a sentimental tearjerker meant to both teach you something and make you feel something at the same time. The way this touching tribute to Mitch Albom's mentor is written, it's like reading about a teacher's final lesson to his student. The last thing I'll say about it is that if you've never read a Mitch Albom novel before, Tuesdays with Morrie is probably one of the best places to begin. Up next at number 4 is Finding Chica. This nonfiction memoir lets us sneak a peek at the life of Chica, a little Haitian girl who experiences a lot in a short amount of time. She's born 3 days before a devastating earthquake, has her mother die while giving birth to Chica's sibling, and ends up living at an orphanage in Port-au-Prince. That's where Mitch Albom and his wife Janine first meet Chica. They help fund the orphanage and come by regularly to check up on the kids. Not able to have children themselves, they fall in love with the kiddos there at the orphanage. So it's no surprise that when Chica is diagnosed with a rare kind of brain tumor at just 5 years old, Mitch and Janine adopt her and begin searching out the best doctors in America and around the world, hoping and trying to find a cure. While this book easily could have lost its focus and made Mitch Albom's part in Chica's life more of the story, Mitch remains in the background. Without a doubt, the star of the show is Chica. As Albom shares detailed memories of her, she explodes off the pages with her joy, curiosity, and unique outlook on life. In only 256 pages, this book explores the innocence of children, the struggles of parenthood, what it means to be a family, and how people grieve for loved ones. It'll tug on your heartstrings in the best possible ways, and I can't recommend it enough. And similar to one of the other books I already mentioned, Albom says that when you buy the book, all proceeds from the sale go to support the Have Faith Haiti Orphanage. Coming in at number 3 and getting the bronze medal is The Stranger in the Lifeboat. It's not everyone's cup of tea, but if you are interested in questions of faith, prayer, suffering, you'll probably enjoy this book. The quick and dirty overview is that a group of passengers from a luxury cruise liner pull a strange man from the sea. He claims to be God and says he can only save them if they believe in him. The story is narrated by Benji, one of the passengers, via a notebook that's discovered by a detective a year later in the empty life raft that's washed ashore. Some of the characters who survived and are floating in the lifeboat are notable figures in the world. Others are completely the opposite. It's this range that creates the book's tension as we dig into their backstories, struggles, and doubts. Part of the reason I'm giving this Mitch Albom book the bronze medal is it's an absolute page-turner. It'll give you goosebumps as you race to figure out exactly how it's going to end. And throughout the entire thing you'll be wondering what's real, what's not, and who is this unexplainable stranger who came into the lifeboat. For a book that's so isolated in its setting, it goes a lot of different directions, uncovering the details of this mysterious incident that's filled with religious implications. Snagging the silver medal and coming in at number 2 is The Little Liar. This book has another interesting narrator, the personification of truth, who moves the story along, going from character to character over the years. We've seen Albom do this before, kind of, in The Timekeeper, but he's even more successful in The Little Liar. The addition of truth as a storyteller adds a cool extra wrinkle to a book about facts versus fiction. The book itself unfolds in a neat way too. It starts with all of the characters collected together. Then they spread out across the globe and slowly start reconnecting over the course of time. Eventually the book ends in an epic climax that brings them back together and ties up all of the loose ends. One of the main characters is Nico Crispus, an 11-year-old Jewish boy living in Thessaloniki, Greece in the 1930s. Nico is truthful to a fault, and that's used against him by a Nazi officer stationed in Thessaloniki, who tells Nico to let his neighbors know that the cattle cars are taking them somewhere safe, a new place they can call home, where there's plenty of food and jobs. Of course, this is a lie, but Nico, being as young and innocent as he is, doesn't realize it. When he learns what he's done, though, although it's not entirely his fault, Nico feels beyond guilty. He unwittingly played a part in leading his friends and family to their deaths. Because of this deep shame, he becomes a pathological liar, telling lies about anything and everything, big and small, meaningful and meaningless. While this book could have plodded along, it never stalls, continuously moving at a brisk pace. As it chugs along, the characters try to right past wrongs, find forgiveness in the eyes of the living and the dead, and move forward in spite of the past traumas that they've experienced. The book spans several decades and settings, from Auschwitz during the Holocaust to Hollywood, with filmmakers, Nazi hunters, and secret identities all playing a pivotal role in the plot. It's a fantastic read, with my only real critique being about one of its main characters, a Nazi officer who kind of feels stagnant. Now, I get it. Albom wanted the Nazi character to be the epitome of unflinching, unchanging evil, but I think it would have worked better if Albom would have let this character evolve a tad over the course of the book. I'm not sure he experienced even a twinge of remorse or guilt, which I desperately hope isn't based in reality. And drumroll please, coming in at number 1 and getting the gold medal is The Magic Strings of Frankie Presto. Interestingly, my favorite Mitch Albom book isn't a religious or spiritual one. It's a work of historical nonfiction with a splash of magical realism mixed in for good measure. Similar to Albom using truth or Father Time as narrators or key figures in his books, this time music is the book's narrator. The fictional Frankie Presto is the best guitarist who ever lived, and he plays a guitar with magical abilities. Presto is a wonderful, flawed character who Albom weaves into music history. In essence, Frankie is the Forrest Gump of this story. He pops up in some of the most important moments that shape real-world musicians, and there are fictional interviews with some of these artists in the book as well. The way this is done makes Frankie seem incredibly real. Seriously, after reading this book, you might forget for a second that Frankie Presto never actually existed. The power of music, no matter the genre, is also especially evident in this book. Whether it's a vinyl album that you wore out, a musical instrument you can't put down, or something else, I'm sure you've experienced just how music makes an impression on our lives. For me, I played trumpet for 7 years through middle school and high school. After being without it for 5 years, I got the urge to play an instrument again. It just wouldn't go away. I wanted to create music, so I picked up the mandolin and became incredibly mediocre at it. But being able to play a handful of chords satisfied my need to have music in my life again. In the book, we follow Frankie from birth to death, from first note to last, as his music inspires, moves, and changes lives. I've always enjoyed Mitch Albom's writing style since it's usually short and sweet. This book, shockingly though, is almost 500 pages long. Albom doesn't usually write books this long. Luckily, this one never drags. And it's all due to how many layers Albom is able to mix in, which in the end turns into a literary symphony about Frankie Presto's tragical, magical, musical life. There you have it, the 10 Mitch Albom books I've read ranked from worst to first. Let me know in the comments which ones you've loved, liked, or hope to read soon. And also remember to like and subscribe. Happy reading.